All right, thanks, Liz. Hey, welcome everybody. So what I will do is I won't get too far down into the weeds, but for those of you who are not currently using PSTrax, just a couple of quick minutes, a brief overview of what the system is and the different aspects of checks that we offer. So the PSTrax system is an automated check system. It is cloud-based or web-based. That means in simple English, it's accessible on any device with internet access, right down to a smartphone. You can put an icon on any device with those internet access. You can sign in, complete your checks, set your alerts, so on and so forth. The nice thing about that is it is a mobile system, so you can walk around a rig or you can even do it post-call or whatever the case may be. The idea behind our system as well is it is built and custom configured to what you want for your vehicle checks, or for that matter, any of the other modules that we offer as far as SCBA, PP, asset, station, supplies, and narcotics. We build your check system for you. You tell us which modules you need to help with your operational checks, and that's how we build it. And again, use any device with internet access. It does not store any data on that device. It jumps right back up to the cloud. So it's immediate reporting as well as accountability for who did what checks when. If they were to sign in on a smartphone, it would look a lot like this. So it brings them to whatever station is their default station. They have the ability to go ahead and move from station to station if you're an agency with multiple stations. As they sign in, it recognizes who signed in. If Ryan signs in on his device, it tells him that he has 8 PPE checks due. Here are the vehicles currently at station 1 and what checks are due on those vehicles. It also does the same thing for the other modules. So the idea behind this is very simple. You want to get your crews to one area or one dashboard, as they call it, where they can do whatever checks are needed that day. And again, because it's an automated scheduling system, that could be a combination of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, even 6 months checks. If they fall due on this date or are still open, they will show up on the dashboard. For those of you on the reporting side or admin side, all your reports are available to you in real time. I'll touch base on that a little bit later. The alert feature is where you can actually send those notices right from the checklist to an intentional group of recipients. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Again, use any device with internet access. It'll scale itself out to the screen size. We get this question a lot on barcode scanning. Is it necessary to barcode and QR code everything on your rig or across your agency to use the system? The short answer is no, it is not necessary. We do have that scalability. If you do want to use barcode and QR codes and use a scanning device of your own to scan in an item and pull it up in your checklist, you can. But again, I will tell you 95, 98% of our folks are not using that. They may use it at a warehouse, but typically not on your rig checks. It is your data. It's always your data. We just store it in the cloud for you. And again, we are going to build this. This is where we differentiate from the others out there. We do have the software system, absolutely, but we are going to build it for you and load it based on what you want checked when across your vehicles or any of your other gear or equipment. We train you, we roll it out, and then we also take care of your ongoing support and changes, which is unlimited. In terms of the vehicle checks, what does that look like? Well, it's basically we will build a master checklist for every rig individually. A rig of this size may have 300 or 400 checks throughout the calendar year. Why? Well, you're going to have vehicle maintenance checks that we will build in for you. What do you want to check daily, weekly, monthly? Preventive maintenance, maybe every 6 months, maybe every year. That will be built into the system. In addition, we will build in all of the tools and equipment, compartment by compartment on your rig, whether it's a frontline fire or a medic unit or grass truck, light rescue, heavy rescue, battalion, doesn't matter. We still build it individually for each vehicle. Also, a really great aspect of this is that multiple crew members can log in on the same account or system and go to the same vehicle and walk around and do their checks together on the same vehicle. For example, this individual says, I'll start up in the cab. This individual is starting here on the mid compartment for extrication tools. And this one's on the rear compartment. They're all working off of their phone or their individual Toughbook or iPads. They are all completing their individualized checks that they are looking at for that compartment. They can send alerts, they can log them up. The other neat thing about this is, suppose now Murphy's Law says as soon as you get started, that's when a call will come in. They can go down, they can log the checks they have done up until that time, go on out to the call, come back and pick up where they left off. So we're going to touch on that in quite a bit more detail when we get into the system. Again, just a quick overview for those new to PSTrax or had not heard about us. We do offer 3 different equipment modules as well: SCBA, PP assets, tracking all your NFPA checks, as well as full history, expirations, maintenance costs, so on and so forth. Station module takes care of the station inside and out, up and down, whatever you want checked, we build that. For those of you with the ALS support, we do build a controlled substance check for managing your controlled substances or scheduled substances. All chain of custody is tracked through the system. Other individuals ask about supplies, consumable supplies. We track that as well. So it allows individuals to track expirations, par levels, that get notification when something is transferred from one closet to a rig or so on and so forth. So that was just kind of a brief overview about PSTrax. Liz, I'm going to jump into the actual module check system itself, unless you have any questions as we begin.
No, you know what, Dave? I think we're good to roll ahead.
Okay, so let's talk about what it looks like. So the neat thing about PSTrax is we do not have a user cap or ULA or anything like that. So when we build your check system, you tell us who you want to give access to on your check system, and right down to which station, which module, and what can they do in your system. So whoever you give access to, we will build your user profile. We will assign them a unique user ID and a password. Now that, of course, can be all crew members. It can also be, of course, all staff, admins. You can even provide access to your vendors or your fleet shop down the street if you would like to do so. Why? Well, perhaps you want to send those same notices that you receive for alerts or maintenance items to those folks or people who might be helping you manage or maintain your SCBAs or PP or things like that. But again, the user ID controls who gets into your system, and you determine that, and we just build that in. But just as important, as they sign in to complete their checks, it is going to date and timestamp every user that got into the check system and did those checks. So when I log in, it defaults to my station of choice, station 2. For those of you out there with multiple stations, if your crew happens to be at another station for the day, they can click over there and jump to that station and see what is due at that station, as far as vehicles that are currently assigned to that, or any unique apparatus or things like that, that may be at station 1. I'm going to change back to station 2, but again, you have the ability to toggle back and forth. I'll get into a little bit later about how you can manage your fleet from station to station through the fleet activity report. I'll get to that in just a bit. Again, when you log in, the way our dashboard is configured is we try to keep it as simple and as intuitive as possible. So here, if I am logged into station 2, if I'm an EMT and I have controlled substance check, I can click here. Supplier inventory checks, PPE. As an officer or admin, you would see a much larger number. An individual crew member is only going to see their gear that may be due that day for a check. It may be a number 6 or 7 or 8. It might be a 0. Officers or admins, you can see everybody's PPE that is due. More specifically for today's webinar, it will list the rigs that today are currently assigned to this station. And do they have any open checks? Is there anything coming due as far as some sort of a preventive maintenance? This tells me that there are 3 open issues already identified on this rig, whether it's vehicle maintenance or tools or equipment. Again, if you had the SCBA module, an asset module, an inventory module, and if you had scheduled SCBA checks affiliated with this rig, this number would populate as well. But as I slide down here, I can very easily see the rigs that are at station 2 today, and do they have open checks? Do not let these large numbers scare you. The idea behind this is I've allowed daily, weekly, quarterly, perhaps monthly, even 6 months checks to accumulate. So at whatever date in time your crew logs in, they see what is still due on that vehicle. If by chance they don't get to that scheduled check, it does not drop off the system. It stays active until it is completed. One question that we get a lot is, should we assign checks to individual crew members? Well, we know based on feedback after about 15 years of doing this and hearing constant feedback is typically not a good practice. At any given time, that person who is assigned to a specific check, if you had it set up that way, what if they do not come in that day, or what if they happen to miss that check and it happens to be a critical check? What we have put into our system is the checks are assigned to the vehicle, and it allows users that you give access to this station to go in and complete those checks, whoever that may be. Your reporting does show full accountability of who checked what when. And I'll show you that here in just a little bit. So again, you do not typically want to assign checks to an individual. One, our system won't delineate it that way, and two, that could cause problems down the road if that group or individual does not get to that check and it deems to be critical. We have scheduled checks. We have as needed checks as well, and I'll go into that here in just a little bit. So again, this is my schedule. I can scan up and down and see which vehicles need to be checked today. Again, multiple crew members can click on the same vehicle and start their checks. Just as important as knowing what is due today is the ability to also see what has been identified for any of the vehicles, whether it's a vehicle maintenance issue or whether it's a tool or equipment issue on that rig or associated with it. That's the reason for the alert menu here right in the middle. It's intentionally placed here in the middle. This tells me that today at Station 2, these vehicles that are assigned here, and I just have my engine issues right now identified, but it could be other issues identified. I can see that somebody in a previous check has already identified an issue with a recip saw, specifically saw 286 is not operational. Somebody found this issue yesterday that the DOT lights are not working. An officer or engineer has taken action on this and called the shop to set an appointment. So you can see not only who identified it, but is action being taken on it. Understand that you're going to see different names here. You're seeing my name because this is my demo site, but you would see the specific crew member who identified it and the specific officer or admin or whoever might be taking action to get this issue resolved. Down here, same thing. I have an outside step that is loose. I have called the maintenance shop, and hopefully they came out yesterday to address that, and I'm just waiting for that to be resolved so I can close this out. Last but not least on our dashboard is a fancy whiteboard or chalkboard that you typically have at the back of a bay. Well, here it is on your dashboard. As officers or admins or engineers, you can sign in and say, okay, I want to go ahead and post out a notice for the crew to see when they sign in to their PSTrax system. You will tell us which categories you want and when you want to post it. These are just my examples. Suppose you have some training coming up. You could type that out. You could add an attachment. You can post that out by station or across multiple stations and leave it up there until you take it down. It's just another way to communicate with the crew. Many of you may have a reporting or incident reporting system, and you might be using it for that, or you might be using Microsoft Teams or texting or things like that, or group chat. Again, these are all built in to our check system. If you want it turned on, you just tell us. So I want to stop here for just a second, Liz. I always like to ask, is there any questions about how we configure the dashboard view so that the crews can easily follow what's going on a day-to-day basis? If not, I will keep moving.
I have one question for you, Dave. How customizable is the dashboard for departments?
We get that question all the time. Currently, it is not customizable as far as moving things out. If folks do not want the alert window, that's fine. It can be closed off, but we would suggest against that. And the journal feature can be turned on or off as well. For right now, the configuration is to provide the schedule here front and center based on the stations. They are looking at further enhancements for moving the dashboard around a little bit. But quite honestly, Liz, this is the feedback has told us that this is the configuration that the majority of our users are very comfortable with, both at the crew level and the officer level. And I hope that answered that question.
Thanks, Dave.
If not, please write in and I'll try to delineate a little further.
Real good.
So far, so good. Okay, well, let's do some vehicle checks because that's what this webinar is all about. So very simply, if I log in here, I say, okay, well, you three, go ahead and grab engine 2. Well, when they click on here, again, they're all going to be able to see the same view, and that is a list of the checks that are currently due still on this vehicle. Now, of course, you can see to the right that those issues that were identified on the main dashboard are again showing here so that they can see that. But PSTrax likes to go a step further because we know human nature is I look only at this view right here and don't look to my right. I understand that. So as you scroll down through, you're going to see how we break out our checks. This is my task group, operational checks under daily, and there's the different items that you would tell us to build in. You're going to notice a bell here. Well, what's the bell for? Well, the other concern that people say is, how do I keep something from being reported again and again or duplicated? That's exactly what this feature is for. I know that it's been reported over here, but even if I don't see that, I click on the bell and I can see, okay, it's due again today, but somebody's already identified that. The appointment is for today. I don't need to further report that. If I'm curious, I can log in on the eyeball and see who did those last 5 checks. Again, folks, you're only seeing my name. You would see a different crew member's name and when that issue was identified. So we scroll down here a little bit further, and maybe you want to have us break out the outside checks. You'll see that as well. One thing that we think is really helpful for a lot of our agencies, and that is the ability for us to add attachments to your checklist. For example, if you have new to role folks and they are not familiar with this rig, you can send us PDFs or labeled pictures, whatever you'd like. We will attach that to your checklist. So as they're going through, if they are not familiar with that rig, you can send us those attachments and we will add them to your checklist. Similarly, if you are asking somebody to come along here and check under the hood and they're not familiar with what to look for there, again, same thing. You can send us those pictures, label them, and we will attach it to the appropriate task group in your check group. Some folks have asked us, well, what if I want to go ahead and take a picture of each compartment and send it to you so that I can help my folks visually see what should be in each compartment? Can you do that? Yes, send it to us. We will attach it here. Some folks have uploaded or linked to a video on how to complete a check, and that can be attached as well. So again, we try to make this as user-friendly as possible. They are merely going through and seeing what they need to check. You'll notice in some cases we have a red field or a window here. In some checks, you might say, look, I appreciate you're going to check the tire pressure. Don't just tell me you kicked them. Go ahead and humor me and log in the tire pressure so I know what you saw at that time. Help my engineers out to maintain the rigs. Another one that's very popular is where folks say, okay, check the odometer on a weekly basis. But PSTrax, add a note to my check that says, hey, set up a PM alert or preventive maintenance alert, send that out if it crosses over every 3,000 miles, or maybe it pivots off of engine hours. So again, we really try to build in the preventive maintenance checks as well as the day-to-day checks, and just as important, the tool checks that are loaded in each compartment. We can also build in drop-down menus to make it easy for them to record levels. So as I'm going through here, you can see I can get through all the vehicle maintenance issues, that's fine, but just as important, that might be something you want us to build under monthly checks. Whatever your frequency is for going through this rig is how we're going to build it. However you want us to separate the compartments. So again, somebody can start back in here and do this. I can start up here at the top. Liz, I see your face. That tells me that we have a question.
I have actually 2 questions. So the first one is, when items get resolved or fixed, do they automatically go away or do you have to resolve them? Can you just walk through that one?
That's a great question. Let's talk about that. So Two things that are really important there. These alerts can stay up as long as you'd like. I have my set up so that they drop off after 14 days. I do not recommend that. I recommend that you leave them up in the beginning as long as it takes to get these issues resolved, because out of sight is out of mind. They will still show up here, of course. Great question. As these issues are taking place or are taken care of, for example, let me grab this vehicle maintenance issue down here. And suppose the shop came out and was able to re-weld this bracket. As an officer or admin, you have the ability to go ahead and verify that this issue has been resolved. That's great. I can just come on here, edit, I can close it out. But a lot of our agencies say, well, wouldn't it be neat if I could actually attach a copy of that PO or that invoice and record the cost of that issue to that check? So let me do that real quick for you. I can come in here and say, all right, they came out, they took care of it, they emailed the invoice, so they dropped it on my desk. I will verify that that's been repaired. I will come along here and I will edit this and I will say, okay, it's been repaired. I can place the shop name if I want. This is entirely up to you. This is your record. The neat thing here is I can electronically add the attachment of that invoice or PO or receipt right here. And just as important, record the charge that my agency incurred. I can close it. I can notify the other recipients there that I am closing this out. When I do, it will, yes, drop off the front here. And in a little bit, I will show you where your 5-drawer archives are right here. What was the second question, Liz?
Awesome, Dave. So I have an attendee, Brittany, who has raised her hand. So I don't know what she's going to ask you. This will be awesome. I'm going to put her on.
It appears though that Brittany is muted. I could be wrong.
Yeah, we need to unmute Brittany.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Sure
Sure
can.
can.
Okay, perfect. So when we have these alerts, are the crews able to say, yes, I would like to flag this or mark it with a bell so that we know it's being attended to, but I only want to send this to my captain who's going to fix it. I don't want to send this to everybody.
That's exactly right. And when we go through, Brittany, that is a big part of our system, is being able to intentionally set these alerts and send them out to the specific group that you want for the various alert categories.
Okay,
And
yeah, because I want the completed check to be accessible once it's completed for all the crews to go back and see that check. But then if there's something wrong or broken or missing or an alert that is ongoing, then that could be specifically for the captain.
Right. When we develop the alert categories, you're going to tell us what those categories will be and who should receive those by text and or email. In addition to that, again, they will also post up here so that you don't have 30, 40, 50, 120 people calling the captain going, what about, what about? So the idea behind posting the alert here so that everybody can see in your agency at Station 2, this has been identified, is being worked on. The person who received that, or the individuals, and it could be more than one, who received that notice right then and there when it was sent out by text and or email to the crew. And I will show you how those categories work and how you will tell us which recipients get which notice.
Okay.
Great question.
Are we able to see all the categories on the left-hand side, even if we do not have all of those categories built?
You would not. On
Okay.
this, you would only see the ones that are specific to the modules you currently have. So I'm showing all of them, and that's a great question, Brittany.
Okay. And then I have one last question. I'm so sorry. My
No.
last one is on the right-hand side in that journal. In addition to the trainings, I see the pass on report was kind of like a daily blog of like some things that they kind of just what they accomplished that day. And whether I went into the rig check to see that all those tools were checked off, or I can just briefly see their journal entry on what they completed. However people go about using that journal entry on the right-hand side is up to them, right? It
That's-
could be pass on, it could be training, it could be pertinent notes, it could be what you did every shift.
That's exactly right. We have people say, hey, we still use the old daily log binder. Could we go
Okay.
ahead and use that instead over here? This is entirely what you want to use it for as a means of communication. You are dead on 100% right.
Okay. And then if they are doing a daily, I'm sorry, like let's say a monthly or a weekly rig check versus a daily, which for us is a lot more thorough and in depth. If they are doing that rig check versus the other one, all of those will be recorded as well too. So like for example, if I'm looking at my voltage for the battery, I could have it within a specific range. And every single day, whether we type in a decimal number or we just say it's within that range, yes or no, it will automatically alert somebody when it's not within that range, or we have the ability to then send it to a captain.
We currently, you will have the ability to decide whether or not you want to send that or not.
Okay.
We are looking at those automations. However, we're a little guarded about where we want to go with that. We meet with the development team every week, and quite a few of our agencies are a little bit apprehensive about turning on an auto alert feature, even though it's under development right now, because the possibility of getting inundated with things which do not require somebody's immediate attention.
Exactly. There's some people here that ask me, I definitely just want to know yes or no, it's within that range. But then my follow-up question was, okay, so if it is 0.01 volts out of that range every day it is, you're going to be notified. Is that also something you're okay with? And they were like, well, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. And that's why we tell folks to, tell us what these categories are, and you can have multiple categories for, similar checks on the rig, but have it go to a different group of people. And as I go through and complete some checks, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to take you behind the scenes here in a little bit and show you that master check list itself and why we break it out by daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or whatever you want. Just as important, though, before I forget, folks, is the ability for us to build as needed checks, unique one-off checks, such as somebody says, okay, really rough day, go ahead and do a quick daily again at the end of the shift, or weekly, or post call. We've even had people say, can you build me a fuel log? This one's very popular, and that is, go ahead and check the rig after a call. Make sure that everything made it back into the rig and everything is functional. These are as needed checks that can be pulled down by the crew at anybody's direction and are in addition to the scheduled checks. And I'll show you that here in just a little bit. I see
And we could attach a
as well.
document as well to that if we wanted to do like a truck swap over checklist or something.
Attach a document to which check?
The as needed check. The two that I could think of is we do post call, or we do if we are swapping from one engine to the next, like if one's going out of service or something, we would have to do like a rig swap. So we have a checklist for items that we would have to pull from one engine to the next.
Oh, we have something even a little bit more simple than that. Yes, if you want us to build it as a checklist there, but we also have another little tool where you can temporarily transfer rigs or tools and equipment from one rig to another and have record of who transferred it when, and then is it still outstanding and who transferred it back. I will get to that as well. That's an excellent question.
Okay, perfect.
You bet. Nope, you're hitting all the questions that we get. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brittany. And we do have one more before we move on, Dave.
Sure.
So the question is, how far back can you look at the journal? For instance, if there was an issue from a previous month, are you able to see that?
Yes, you can go into the journal archive. And I'm jumping down here is the report or admin menu. The crews, quite honestly, folks, don't care a lot about this unless they have responsibilities for a specific area. I can go into any department posts across any station posted by or categories, and I can pull those up as well and search any date range. So that is exactly why when you do post something, if you choose to archive it, and most everybody does, for just that reason, can you go back and retrieve that? If this is no longer active, if I archive it, can I retrieve that down the road? Specifically why we have the archive feature. Great questions, folks, so far. What else?
That's all I've got for now. Dave, carry on.
All right, well, let's do some checks real quick, and then the rest of these things will probably fall into place, and that is all right. You 3 crew members, go ahead and jump on engine 2. Again, where I was starting with that is, all right, what do I check? I don't have to guess. I can see this. I can see these 2 issues are still open. If everything is fine, I am merely going to go through here and say, yes, I'm aware there's no new DOT issues. I'm good. I can come down through here and say, everything's fine. Don't worry about that. Actually, you know, it's not. No, as I look again there, I have a leak onto the cab. All right. So what we suggest is that folks go through here and they complete task groups and send them up right then and there so they can help the others see that these have been satisfied. I can come along here. I can check this, check this. This, I do need to go ahead and record what I'm seeing as far as tire pressure, and I can log these items. Well, what the system is saying is you want to go ahead and log these as complete, but you want to identify this issue in red. Yes, I do. The neat thing about this is they do not have to jump out to another reporting system to report that issue. Now, Brittany's question, and that was a great segue to what categories of issues can be identified, and can you set up specific recipients? Yes, so my categories that I've used for my demonstration are listed here for vehicles and/or station. And you can see here that I've designated these folks as recipients for vehicle maintenance. If it's tools and equipment, it might go to a different group of folks. If it's hazmat equipment, it might go to a different group of folks. Maybe EMS for your medic units might go to a different group of recipients. So you will tell us which categories you want and who do you want to receive those notices in real time by text or email. Before we ever get there, I can add additional notes. I can certainly mark this urgent. Something that's really neat, Brittany, I think this might have been what you were asking about. You can add an attachment, more specifically, a picture. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. If I want to report what I saw for damages to the rig or damages to tools or equipment or PP or SCBAs, I can take a picture, much like you and I would with our smartphone right now, and attach it to a text or email, attach that as well. I come down here and I say, yes, I want these identified individuals to receive this. You know what, though? The chief is getting real tired of this thing leaking and would like to be added to these every time. They'll turn that off right away. But for right now, I can add additional recipients or users from my system and set that alert. When I do, that notice is going out by text and or email to those individuals, whether they're logged in or not. It's hitting their phone, it's hitting their laptop at home or at work. It's posted right here. So I can post out those issues and it brings me right back to where I left off. Same thing for the individuals coming down through here and identify an issue with equipment that might be damaged or something to that effect. I get into the pump panel and I notice that something is missing. I can identify that as well, or damaged. So the idea is very simple. You have us build what you want checked and when, and make it very easy to report. Now let me jump back to the dashboard. That newest issue got posted right here, front and center. Now, specific to what Brittany's question was, and probably several others, what do you do with this? Great, we've reported it. Everybody knows it's out there. Well, now I need to take action on it. Typically, most agencies might take a swing at it themselves if they had their own internal fleet shop, but many of them say, no, I looked at it. I can't attack this. I need to call my fleet shop to have this addressed. It might be a whole lot more than just a loose drain plug. So I can take action on this and I can call the shop. And I can set the appointment for, repair or inspection, whatever that might be. Help if I could spell. And when I do that, then I can come down here and here's something kind of neat. Maybe I want to vet this first before I automatically have it sent to the shop. Now I can say, shop, I'm sending you this notice we just discussed, and do that. So I should have put on this set appointment for repair for a specific date. I forgot to include that. But now everybody can see that that issue is been identified and is being worked on. So that's part of the issue right there, is not just identifying the checks, completing them, identifying issues, getting them to the right party and have them get underway. And as you saw, once this is resolved, it can then be logged out or closed out. Now, one question we get a lot, and I will get to the log as far as who did what check when, but a lot of folks say, well, what do I do with that? Instead of, I get those receipts in, either the admin or secretary or myself, we drop it in a 5-drawer, and it's very difficult to retrieve those records. For all of our modules, you have an archive for the various things. Today's vehicles, I will focus on that. I can go to my archives. I can identify any of my rigs, but today I'll just stay on engine 2. Any of my categories of issues that have been opened and or closed, I can pull up, or any date range. I can even see who posted what when. I can go back to any date range that I'd like. I won't go back quite that far. And I can say, okay, what's been going on? What has been reported on this vehicle, whether it's vehicle maintenance issues, tools or equipment, hazmat equipment, whatever it might be. And I'm asking the system to go back through and basically go through my old paper checks in 5 drawers and now electronically tell me what has been identified over that period of time. I can see these are still open issues that have been identified. They have not yet been resolved. As I scroll down through here, I can see the issues that have been resolved. And if I had a picture and or invoice attached, I would have a paperclip icon here. So I can go through all of these, and someone asks, well, what are you spending on vehicle maintenance over this period of time? I can click to that. I can see that, those issues. I can export that out in one click, print Excel or PDF. I have a record of what the issues are and associated costs. Conversely, somebody could come along and say, what about tools and equipment? What do you have into that so far? I can see that. Even if there's no cost involved, I can see what's been identified. Now, what happens though if an issue is resolved a little bit later, but you want to be able to close it out from this alert menu or from this archive? I can do that. I can come back in and edit this or any of the things that have already been resolved and add the invoice when I get it at a later date, or even update a cost to that. So again, this is somewhat of a, I like to look at it as my 5-drawer, my accounting behind the scenes method. Do you have to use all the features of it? No, but it is very handy for you to see what's going on. Liz, I see I have another question. I am trying to pay attention.
You are correct, Dave. You do have another question. So the question is, if your department doesn't have a shop and you use a private mechanic or someone outside of your organization, can you add their email address to the notification list, even though they're not technically part of the department?
That is exactly what we do. And we work with a lot of large agencies who say, I have a maintenance shop down the street and I have to communicate with them, or I'd like to be able to do that. That's exactly why when we go and build this in and we build a user list, a lot of our individuals say, go ahead and include my vendor or my maintenance shop or how they're being identified so that I can forward that notice to them or even make them a direct recipient of these issues for exactly that reason. So it is very user-friendly to go ahead and communicate those issues to those folks. And then here's something neat. That same shop down the street can log back in and say, your vehicle's ready, and here's the receipt, and electronically send it.
And Dave, I think it's important to note too that while you have those persons in your user list, you can give them very limited access so that they're not in there meddling with your checks or your reporting, or you can
everybody. That is exactly right. And in that user list, you control who gets in station by station and how far in they can go as a user or an admin. That is exactly right. Right down to the specific module. So you could have your fleet shop log in and they can click till they're blue in the face on the other modules and nothing will happen.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dave.
Great question. Okay. So, all right. So we've covered several things, right? We've covered the scheduled inspections. We've set the alerts. We've communicated. Wonderful. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, so to speak. And I'd sure like to be able to see what was checked when by somebody, whether I'm using it to improve my ISO, whether it's compliance, my own internal safety checks, whatever the city wants to see. I want the ability to see who did what check when on any of my rigs. And I can do that. I'll just pick, I can pick any of my rigs, any of the multiple checklists that we can pull. You can pull that down. I can even come down here and see who did what check when. So Liz knows I like to pick on the owner of the company since he's not attending today. And I will find Scott. And Scott tells me I have done all my checks for the past month. I know I have. I'm wonderful. Well, then I like to use this as a help me understand moment why I have no record of any of the checks that you completed. Again, folks, this is not why you're going to use this, but you do have full accountability. So let's not pick on the president anymore in case he's listening. And come through here, and I want to see who did what checks over the last month, but I can go to any date range and view this. What this is doing is this is basically all of my paper checks electronically automated for me. I know exactly who did what check and when was it scheduled. Again, you're only seeing my name. Understand, you'd see the different crew members that logged in or engineers that completed these checks. What did they check? Well, I can see that here. I can come down here and see exactly what they checked. If they found anything, I can see that as well. I have the ability to filter out though by a specific item or vehicle maintenance issue and see that. If I am curious about my DOT checks and I need to produce that report because of either an accident or somebody saying you're non-compliant, I can have a lot of fun with them and say, I beg to differ. Here is my compliance checks for my DOT and all records of those things. When they are not working, you know that I have record of when it was resolved. So I can filter out by any of that. So the idea here is very simple. You have full accountability for what was checked on which rig when. That's just one of the reports. Another one that people like to see is the out of service report. And that is the ability for somebody to say, well, look, city, this thing's getting tired. I have had this out a ton. How long has that thing been out of service? And I'll pick on actually engine one here. We take that out a lot. I can go back to any date range. I can go back a year, whatever I need to go back, or even further and say, look, it's been out of service such and such days. Now, again, for the demonstration purposes, folks, we only take it out of service for a couple of minutes, but it could be out for days or hours or things like that. And you have a report available to you that, yes, it's been down 67 days out of 365. And why? In addition to that, as you saw, you have your archive reports to say, well, why was it out? And what am I spending on maintenance? But something else that's kind of neat that I like, and that is the ability to go in here and somebody says, today, what do you have in maintenance to date on this rig? Now I've got 91,000 maintenance on this rig. That may not cause me a heart attack if it's 10 years old. I might have a stroke if it's 2 years old, but I want the ability to see the details on the rig and how many times it's gone in and out of service. And this is just a quick overview of what do I have into the vehicle maintenance on this rig. And again, what you will see in our system is the ability to navigate to different pieces of information in a very short period of time. If I'm managing multiple rigs across multiple stations, I've seen pictures, I've had people hold up their laptops, say I've got a chalkboard behind me, I've got a magnet bar, I move the rigs. I'd much rather be able to come up here and view by station, where are my apparatus? Are they active and in service? Are they out of service? Are they in reserve? How many open inspections? How many open issues? And by the way, these are hyperlinks. And see exactly what I have at each station and its status. I can filter out by any of these. I can see them all. I can filter out by the units, whatever I want to do. But from here, if I'm managing my fleet, I also have the ability to do the same things that I did on the dashboard, and that is to manage that vehicle. I can take it out of service. I can put it in reserve. By the way, if you have us build this in, you can tell us which checks to toggle off and which to leave on when it's in reserve, or deactivate checklists. I can move this rig to a whole nother station and have the check schedule follow it. So the idea behind here, again, is to do what you're doing on paper, but keep everything following that rig. That's just one aspect of it as well. Liz, I'm going to stop here as well for any questions on the vehicles. There's a few more little tricks we can do. I will get to that other question about moving things around or temporarily transferring things. Any questions so far? I don't see any, but I wanted to check with you.
I don't have any questions, but I'm going to do a time check. We're about 12 minutes left in the webinar.
Okay.
So let's get some cruise. Oh, hang on. Somebody made me a liar. Now we have a couple questions.
See what happens when you ask?
Right. Great. They were like, oh, 12 minutes. So yeah, just get your questions out there, guys, because we do want to be respectful of your time. Dave and I, we're okay. We've got time after, but we know you guys are busy and running around. So anywho, first question I have is there a report to tell how long it took an individual to complete the check, like a timestamp?
I love it. Let's get to that. In fact, we're going there next. All right. So when I go to these logs and reports and I see that, for example, I'll just go to here. When I view this out, I can see who did what check when, right? Well, it would help if I actually pick a rig. So the idea behind this, and again, you don't necessarily want to use that, but if Dave comes back to you and says, I did all 60, 80 checks on this rig on my side, but my date and timestamp that hasn't moved but a minute or two, I know that somebody has pencil whipped this thing. So I can see exactly when they did the check at exactly what point in time. So by merely going through and looking at those checks, I can see that as well and see exactly how they progressed through the checks as they logged through. Not designed to be Big Brother, but yes, you can see exactly who did what checks when. There's some other reports as well, if we wanted to get into that, and you can get real deep into the woods. And that is on-time completion reports. People like to see that, not necessarily by individual, but how long is it taking them to complete their checks on any of my rigs for any date range. So there's all sorts of little bells and whistles in there for the people that like reporting. But you can identify exactly who did what check and when, and by virtue of looking at the date and timestamp, how long did it take to go through their checks? Next
Awesome.
question.
I've got two more. First is there a max time you can move an apparatus to a different station?
Maximum time? No, you can move it as long as you want and leave it over there for as long as you need to. The records will follow that rig.
Beautiful. And then also this person is closing a station for approximately 18 months for replacement. Everything needs to be moved to other stations. Can you talk a little bit about how that works, Dave? Because I know we've got.
If they are currently with PSTrax, we will handle all of that for you. We will set up another station, add a new station for you, whatever you want to identify that, and show that other one as just, if I go over here, we would add that new station location. The other one would be in there, but there would be nothing assigned to it during that period of time. While you could try and do that on your own, I will strongly advise you not to do it. Our guys can go in on the control panel and do it in a shorter time than you and I could talk about it.
Yeah, and basically, if you're going to be spreading it out to different stations, they could certainly go in if you give them a sheet.
Yeah, please involve us in that. And there is no additional cost for that because you haven't increased your scope, folks. All you are doing is moving with point A over to point B. Excellent question. What else we have?
That's all I have for now, Dave. So carry on and I'll see what else we can accumulate.
Yeah, let's get to some really neat things. So the other disconnect we hear for is, oh my gosh, it is so hard to edit my Excel or my paper right now. If I add a check or I move something around, it's the end of the world. It truly is not. This is the master checklist that we build for every vehicle. Again, you will tell us what you want done on a daily basis, how you want us to break it out by task group, weekly basis, so on and so forth. Now, one of the questions we get, well, that's great. We get it all built, but what if I want to add another check to the outside? How difficult is it? It isn't. You call us, we will walk you through this. Then eventually you might want to do it yourself. But again, that's what we're here for. It's really hard. I want to add an outside check. What is my new check? Okay, it's add a new check. Okay, obviously you'll be a little bit more intentional than that. And just that simply, I can add that. It's right there. I say, no, I really don't want to do that. I want to go ahead and remove that. Or I want to change the description here. Can I do that? Yes, as an officer or admin, you can. Your crew, no, do not give them access to your master checklist. I can come up here and I can add some identifying information or change the description and put that in there. The second scenario we get is, that's great, Dave, but in a perfect world scenario, sometimes I decide that I'm not keeping that same tool or saw in that compartment. I'm moving it, or for that matter, I might move it to an entirely new rig. How difficult is that? It really is not. And that is, I can come along here and I say, okay, I'm in engineer compartment 2. If this hook is no longer in this compartment, or for that matter, maybe it's not even on engine 2 anymore, I can move it to another rig, or I can keep it on the same rig. I can change the frequency or leave it the same. But you know what? That's now being stored in compartment 3. The same scale of checks, just that simply, I can move those things over. So this is when you were saying, I'm going to permanently move something over, and permanent is only as good as its definition. You may move it back 6 months from now. But again, we have the ability to take and make this as flexible as you need to do it. And we can help you make those moves. Or I can grab a whole group of things and say it's no longer this rig at all. Now that's when we are moving things over very intentionally. One of the questions that came up, and that is, all right, I take a rig out of service, I grab some tools out of one rig, I move it to another. I don't want a sticky pad or try and play the guessing game of who moved what when. Your crew members can log that for you. I can come in here, or I can hit that same drop down and I can do this. I can go ahead and record what I have transferred. Here I can see that some things have already been transferred over from brush 3 to chief 3. How do I know who transferred them and when? I can see it right here. So I know who I directed to move some things over from one rig to another. That's wonderful. I can see this is open. How about a new move? I come over here and say, look, that rig was taken down. I want to go over to engine 1, and I'm going to grab some items out of there and temporarily move them over to engine 2 because engine 1 is down for maintenance. Okay, what did they move? We're going to build in these inventories of these items from all of your rigs so that they can very simply come along and just put a check on everything that they're moving over. So just that simple, I can grab these things and whatever they pulled from the rig, and it could be anywhere in the rig, I can log this. So as I'm physically moving them, I am logging this and it's saying, these are the things you moved. Yes, I did. All right, I moved them over. I can see who moved those items over and when. Remember, Liz, I told you that this thing would freeze up. It just did.
Of course it did. Dave just has to restart his system for 1 sec, guys, so bear with us. In the meantime, feel free to jot down any questions or comments or anything you have in the chat, because we do have about 5 minutes left here. So we want to make sure we get to anything.
Vince is that the Acer monitor is the same as an Asus. Don't believe them. Oh, I should be back, folks. So what I wanted to see was Dave move these items at this point in time. That's great. That's not the issue. The issue is getting them moved back. So if I want to say, okay, a week later, what do I need to move back? If it's not the same crew member, all they have to do is come into the transfer drop-down menu, find this, come back in here and say, oh, okay, I didn't know this is what they moved over, but I can go ahead and grab this, this, and this. I can grab those items. If I failed to grab some things, but I told you I did and got in a hurry, the system's going to help them understand, well, you got 5 out of 7. Are you sure you want to leave the tick over there in the battery? No, let me go grab those. Okay. So as I'm doing this, you're seeing who moved them over initially, who moved them back a week later. Again, you're seeing it within minutes. But as I do this, the system says, okay, I agree. All items have been logged as returned. Do you want to close this? Yes, I do. So all we're trying to do, folks, is, again, in conclusion, really just we don't want to reinvent your system. We merely want to automate your checks. We want to build additional as needed checks, log the issues very simply, track the issues, track communications, and have the reporting available in real time. One last thing I will conclude with, and that is, as a matter of practice, Liz, we also suggest that users of PSTrax have us set them up with a daily status report. It is basically an emailed summary of the dashboard for each station. How many open checks? What are the open issues? What are the open journal postings? So that I can manage my operation from any location. That's it.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dave. We do have another live question, so I'm going to turn Brittany's monitors and stuff on for her. Go for it, Brittany.
I was curious when I wrote down so many things here. When we search, if an admin or a captain is searching through that archive, I can archive not only alerts, but pretty much any maintenance or conversation, or is it only the alerts that I am able to archive and keep?
It is currently only the alerts that are in the archive.
Okay.
What other issues are you thinking? Because you can actually pull up those reports on those various checklists. For example, if you had us build in a PM checklist or things like that, that can all be retrieved through the logs as well for things that necessarily didn't spur on an alert, but were an identified check.
And then another thing is like some of the things that we are archiving, it might be for different reasons, like for ISO reporting versus recurring issues with the same piece of equipment versus truck swapping, so that because we have something going out of service. So if it is for different reasons, PSTrax doesn't know that. Archived is pretty much just a private cloud system where it's saving us, but we can indefinitely access that whenever we need, though.
You mean our archive, our archive menu over here? Can you access this at any given
Yeah,
time?
like could I organize the things that we are archiving so that if I went back to look, I could say, oh, I want to look for these specific things that are archived for ISO versus these specific things that are archived for maintenance.
You could do that if you had us build in specific categories for those alerts. For example, when I come down here real quick, and I know we're pushing up against the envelope, we have had agencies build unique alert categories that help them identify issues. Maybe you need to delineate between vehicle maintenance ISO or vehicle maintenance internal or things like that. So we can assign various category groups and recipients so that you can go through there and filter out by your identified issues as they're going through and doing the checks. That is correct.
Copy that. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I appreciate it.
No, they're great questions. I promise you, Brittany, somebody else had them too. So thank you so much for bringing those to us.